What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content you watch on the WWE Network. And today we're talking the Meeting Stone Cold special that went up on Tuesday, 3/16 day, back on Tuesday. This is going up on Friday. They did something similar to this back late last year with The Undertaker during Undertaker Month on the WWE Network leading up to Survivor Series, called, obviously, Meeting the Undertaker. And that was really cool. Basically, it involves the superstars of yesteryear and today talking about their initial interactions and meeting that person. In that case, The Undertaker, here it's Stone Cold. And I thought this was very well organized too, because it's not just a bunch of random stories. They cover Stone Cold's career from when he started in like the Chris Adams wrestling days, when he was at his wrestling school, up until WCW, and then WWE until later on in his career. So I thought that was really cool. And a lot of these interviews aren't fresh content. Like, a lot of these interviews are from interviews they had done for Stone Cold's documentary or for other documentaries and stuff like that. So I thought this was really well put together, and it made for a great 27-minute special on Steve Austin Day, on Stone Cold Day. So the first person we hear from is actually Jeff Jarrett, which I was not expecting, but Jeff Jarrett said that he met him in Dallas early on in his own career, in Jeff's own career, at Chris Adams Wrestling School, who Steve trained under. And he said the big takeaway that that he had from meeting Steve at that point was that Steve meant business from day one, and he took this business very, very seriously as a rookie. We hear from Paul Heyman and how he added Steve to the Dangerous Alliance, and how he kind of needed Rick Rude kind of needed someone else in that group to kind of bounce off of and work well with and whatever. And Steve was that guy in WCW, and he mentioned how WCW didn't know how big of a star they had on their hands with Steve Austin until he amounted to huge success in WWE. They knew he was a star. They utilized him well in the Brian Pillman tag team. They worked wonderfully together. They didn't know how big of a star he would end up becoming had they utilized him properly. We hear from Mark Henry, and he said that he always thought, watching Steve from, I don't know if he knew this, if like he was saying this from when he knew Steve or from just watching him in the other company, because he was in WWE at that point. He always thought he had a big mouth when he talked trash. We hear from Ric Flair, who met Steve in WCW, that one of his Steve's first programs in the company was with Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. And he said that he was a man's man at that point. And one of his fondest memories of Steve was watching him face Ricky Steamboat at the 1994 Clash of the Champions pay-per-view, which I don't think I've ever seen that match, but it sounds great on paper. Daniel Bryan says that his first, not interaction, but his first memories of Steve were from when he was the ringmaster, because he's a big technical wrestling fan. Obviously, it's Daniel Bryan, and he thought it was really cool that there was a character named the Ringmaster that was kind of like the master of, not the ring, that would be stupid, but basically in doing all these technical holds and whatever, and he was always a fan of him for that reason alone early on in his career. We hear from Savio Vega, and they probably filmed this when Savio came in for the Taker farewell at Survivor Series. But Savio remembers wrestling him in 1996, and they had a very good feud. It was one of Steve's first full feuds in 96, right at the end of his time with Ted DiBiase, and how their matches got better every single time they wrestled. And they had to do their Caribbean strap match at the In Your House Beware of Dog pay-per-view in May of 96 twice. Because as Savio was walking down to the ring, he says, the lights went out. There was a thunderstorm, they lost power, so they literally filmed that match, and I think the rest of the show in the dark. So then they had to do it again on Tuesday, which is crazy. But both times they beat the hell out of each other, and they made for some of the best matches in both men's careers. We get comments from Vince, which was really cool, and Vince remembers how when he first met Steve, he knew he had a very hard-working attitude. He wanted to be the hardest worker in the room. And Austin came up to Vince one day and said, "Hey, I'm not the ringmaster." And Vince said, "Well, who are you?" He said, "Well, I'm Stone Cold." And even at that point, they didn't know what Stone Cold meant. They didn't know what would become of that character, what it really entailed, until they started filming vignettes and really finding who the real Steve Austin is and incorporating that into a character. And they filmed some great vignettes out of it too, and then obviously it took off from there. Michael P.S. Hayes, Doc Hendricks, back in 96, remembers watching Steve in the King of the Ring 1996 pay-per-view when he went, did all those matches, ran the gauntlet, won the whole tournament, knocked off Jake the Snake Roberts, and cut that amazing post-match promo, which gave birth to the Austin 316 catchphrase. And he remembers how it was very edgy and how it caught fire immediately to the point where the next night on Raw, people were bringing Austin 316 shirts to the arena. And kind of going off that, Kofi Kingston remembers His first memories of Stone Cold were remembering when people were hitting stunners on each other in high school, because he was in high school at the time. And also meeting him, and I think maybe 98 or around there, because he had said he had seen him at the Boston Harbor 98 in the build-up to WrestleMania 14. He and Vince were doing press in Boston before the big show. I don't know if he met him then or somewhere else, but he was wearing Austin's shirt when he met him, which was funny. We hear from Mike Tyson, who was very much involved in the build to the Steve Austin-Shawn Michaels WrestleMania match at 14. And Mike Tyson said he's always been a fan, and he didn't know what was going to happen that night, that he came onto Raw and got into that fist fight with Steve on Monday Night Raw, one of the greatest Raw segments of all time. And he also recalls him, helping him win the WWE Championship from Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 14 as well, with one of the greatest swerves the company has ever done. Vince also called him a natural on the microphone. Just his promos come very easily to him. They show highlights of all the hijinks that Stone Cold has been involved in, from the cement truck, in Jim Ross's words, that he poured the cement into Vince's car, the beer truck, a lot of different stuff that he did back in early 98, late 98, early 99, from that point forward. We hear from The Rock, and I'm sure this was filmed, I don't know when this would have been, but probably a while ago. Rock says that he and Stone Cold had a very special chemistry together, and he remembers headlining 3 different WrestleManias with him. The third one wasn't the main event, but it was close enough to the main event, and I think it was supposed to be the main event, actually, before Steve had determined right before the show that, hey, I can't go anymore. I got to retire, so, let's not be the main event. Probably not the best way to go off the show. But yeah, they had these 3 huge WrestleMania matches, and Rock said he loved every moment of it, and they show the footage of him saying to Steve after the match that, I love you, thank you for everything you've done, stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool. We hear from Undertaker too, and this was more recent. He remembers working with Stone Cold, specifically in the build to SummerSlam 1998, the Highway from Hell match, and how it was really, really cool, and how big that build was, and how special of a moment it was to share the ring with Stone Cold for that match, and how he actually injured his coccyx bone, which is essentially his ass, when he jumped off the top rope. And I think this was the first time doing the move, when he did like the elbow or the leg drop or whatever the fuck that he does on top of the commentary table on top of Austin, and he injured his butt bone as a result, which was funny. Booker T recalls the grocery store brawl, and how it turned out to be gold, and how people who aren't even familiar with his career know him from that segment, which is funny. Kurt Angle, one of his first major programs in WWE, was with Steve, and he remembers being really nervous and intimidated by Steve, but he knew he had to step it up, and Steve is one of the only people to blow Angle up in the ring, in the sense that, he was the only one to get him tired. In any match I think Angle has ever had. They've talked about this before. I think they talked about it on the Broken Skull Sessions podcast, how he was one of the only people to blow him up in the ring, which was really interesting. He talked about that, and how his psychology was second to none, and how he actually had more fun with Steve doing the funny stuff, like with the Yippee-Ki-Yay and I Don't Care, blah, 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 and the cowboy hat and all that other shit. We hear from Xavier Woods, who recalls sharing the ring with him at WrestleMania 32, taking a stunner. Kofi Kingston called it surreal, and for Woods, taking that stunner was one of the coolest things that ever happened to him, and it was a monster reaction, too, when he came out, because people kind of figured he might be on the show, but it wasn't confirmed. So when that music hit in Texas in AT&T Stadium, that WrestleMania sucked. But that Steve Austin return was easily the highlight of the show. It was fucking sick. Big E thought it was pretty cool, too, when they were chugging beers at ringside during the segment, which was funny. We hear from Daniel Bryan again, and he said that one of his fondest memories of Steve was Steve calling him for his neck surgery in 2014, having had his own neck surgery in back earlier on in his career, did Steve. Bryan was able to take a lot of advice from that and learn that you kind of have to adapt your style and change up your style when you come back. You can't be doing the same stuff. You got to tell more of a story, like with Jerry Lawler, like Jerry Lawler used to do earlier on in his career. You have to tell more of a story with the punches and the kicks and stuff like that. And then we hear from Shane. He was kind of like the last person we heard from here, who said that kicking off Raw 25, the 25th anniversary of Raw episode that I was actually at 3 years ago, it was just right. It felt right to kick off the show with Vince and Stone Cold, and they had a great segment. The pop when Steve Austin came out, I still get comments on that fucking video that I put up on my channel to this day, and it's been 3 years. That video has so many views. I think close to 100,000. It's that big of a video. But yeah, it was just an incredible moment, and He said that Stone Cold played that role so perfectly because he was that guy, and it was a very magical night. And then we hear from Stone Cold. It reflects back on his career and how much all this stuff has meant to him, blah, blah, blah. So I thought this was a really cool special. Again, it only clocks in at around 27 minutes, so be sure to check it out. It's a lot like the Taker one they did late last year. So if you're enjoying Steve Austin Week on the WWE Network, then this would be for you. Thanks as always, guys, for checking out these reviews. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Plenty of content coming up in the days to come, so again, be sure to hit that bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up, whether it be interviews, audio reviews, excerpts, Q&A videos, anything like that. We are well past the 5,000 subscriber mark, and I appreciate that. We'll do a formal video at some point celebrating that. So take care, guys. Have a great rest of your week/weekend. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.